Hello, my dear friends! Welcome to Russian with Passion. Today we are going to continue talking about reflexive verbs in the Russian language. This is part 2. There is the first part where I tell the basics. I tell you the basics of how reflexive verbs are formed, of what they actually are, and so on. So if you haven't watched this video, I strongly recommend watching it first. So the first part of reflexive verbs in the Russian language. Study the basics, and when you've done that, if you are ready, we can continue. So in our today's video, we are going to talk about different kinds, different types of reflexive verbs. In the previous video, we talked about simple reflexive verbs, the meaning of which is quite understandable. So, simple reflexive verbs are verbs which denote the concept of self, when you do something to yourself or with yourself. So, for example, одеваться, to dress yourself, бриться, to shave yourself, and some others. The second type of reflexive verbs is reciprocal reflexive verbs. Here we talk about the meaning of each other in two directions. Two people doing something to each other. For example, они целовались в парке. They were kissing in the park. They were doing it to each other. Целоваться, to kiss each other. Обниматься, to hug each other. Встречаться, to meet each other, or it can also have the meaning of to date each other. Do not forget that we can change reflexive verbs quite often into usual verbs by removing the suffix ся or с. For example, we can say целовать, to kiss somebody. But in this case, we use an object. We need an object. We need to say who we kiss. While in this sentence, there's no object. Они целовались в парке. Also, using these verbs, you can have an object, but indirect, with the preposition с. Она встречается с ним уже год. Мы видели, как она обнималась со своим преподавателем. We saw her hugging her teacher. So, we can use these verbs, they are reflexive, reciprocal reflexive verbs, with the preposition с. The next group of reflexive verbs are intransitive reflexive verbs, when there are no objects. Here I'm talking about a direct object. There can be an object after some of these verbs, but before this object we should use a preposition. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Well, one example and then several verbs. Я улыбнулась ему. I smiled at him. Here I am a female because we say улыбнулась. If I were a male, I would say я улыбнулся, not улыбнулась. So, улыбаться, by the way, after it, we can use an object, but indirect, and it should be in the dative case, like here, ему. Ему is the dative form of the pronoun он, he. Смеяться. After this verb, to laugh, we use the preposition над, and then the instrumental case. Смеяться над кем-то. For example, ты смеешься надо мной? Надеяться на. To hope for. Мы надеемся на победу. The next type of reflexive verbs is the verbs which have the meaning of to be. So here we talk about the state of something. Most of these verbs are intransitive and they demand using instrumental case after them. If you take a look at the translation of this verb, you'll see that everywhere we have to be proud of, to be angry with, and so on. So usually we have the verb to be and then an adjective or something of the kind. Let's take a look at the verbs. Гордиться. After it, we use the instrumental case. To be proud of. Гордиться чем-то. Сердиться на plus the accusative case. Be angry with. Интересоваться чем-то. Интересоваться with the instrumental case. Be interested in something. Заниматься. Also instrumental case. To be engaged in. Пользоваться. Instrumental case. Use. Be using. Here we don't actually have the translation of to be with an adjective, but this verb should be here because after it we also use the instrumental case and, well, it's used here somehow. So let's remember it here in this verb group. Увлекаться. Instrumental case. Be keen on. Ошибаться. After it we use the preposition в and then the noun, the object in the prepositional case. To be mistaken. Let's create a couple of examples here. Я горжусь тобой. Я горжусь тобой. Я люблю заниматься спортом. Я люблю заниматься спортом. Спортом is in the instrumental case. So, I like to be engaged in sports. You can also say я занимаюсь языками. Я занимаюсь языками. Он увлекся историческими романами. Он увлекся историческими романами. Они ошибаются. Они ошибаются. Мы больше не сердимся на вас. Мы больше не сердимся на вас. Я не буду сердиться на тебя. Я не буду сердиться на тебя.